Okay, so I'm here as an environmental consultant. I was hired by CENSE to help them kind of understand the potential scenic and visual impacts, and that's one of my areas of expertise. I too have 40 years of experience, but I realized that after 30 years of experience, I started to kind of lose ground with each year, and so I'm not sure that 40 years is a good idea to have. I would have liked to have stopped at 30, actually. So I want to make a couple points. First of all, just a little bit about my background. I'm from Oregon. I live near Portland. I've been a environmental consultant and federal employee, federal landscape architect for a number of years, and spent 2 years here in Seattle. Recently, was working for the Army Corps of Engineers. So I'm pretty familiar with the area, although didn't get over to the Bellevue side of the lake all that often. I lived just on the other side in a little houseboat, which was kind of fun.
Wouldn't be very conventional around here, would it?
No, just, really unusual. So I've taught at University of Oregon, Portland State, and Oregon State Universities. I'm currently on the faculty at University of Oregon, not as a tenured professor, but as a kind of part-timer. I've done previous work in Washington, including testimony to FSEC on a wind energy project in the Columbia Gorge, actually a couple different wind energy projects in the Columbia Gorge. And my testimony was used to help modify the design of that particular project, which was Windy Ridge, which is where I met Rick, by the way. So I've done a lot of work on energy projects, dams, power lines, wind turbines, solar arrays over the years, many different clients, both on the side of proposals to build projects and on the side of people that were against the project. And I try to just, play it as straight as I can when I'm giving my analysis. So I reviewed the analysis that, I didn't do my own independent visual impact analysis, but I reviewed the analysis from PSE's consultants. I found it to be flawed. It was inadequate. The methodology that they used was suspect, and they didn't use it very well. It understates the impacts, although they conclude that the impacts are significant. When impacts rise to the level of significance, that's an important threshold within Washington State law on environmental impact. The project is going to be incompatible, particularly with the neighborhoods it's going through in Bellevue. When I was looking at the project, I was looking at the entire 18-mile corridor, by the way, so I may flop over into some areas that are outside Bellevue, but I'll try to not do that. One of the things that was most troubling, well, let me back up just a second, because I'm not sure, Mr. McLean, what experience you've had in having to assess visual impacts or scenic impacts in the past. So if you'll indulge me for a minute, I just want to say our field has been around since at least the 1940s. And we've developed methodologies, we've developed approaches. There's a statement in the PSE's analysis that says, and I'm quoting here, it's from Appendix C-1 in their environmental analysis. Quote, because the value of scenic views and the aesthetic environment is subjective based on the viewer, it is difficult to quantify or estimate impacts. That's a totally false statement. And it really caught my attention when I was reviewing it because our field, visual impact analysis, has done a lot of work to try and make the outcome of the analysis as objective as possible. So there are subjective factors, there are objective factors, but the result of the analysis should be something that should be repeatable by other experts, doing the same kind of analysis, using the same approach and techniques. It's not more difficult to determine impacts to scenery than it is to determine other impacts, such as impacts to wildlife or water quality. Visual impacts are not physics, but neither is wildlife biology. There's judgments, involved in all these things. There's subjective and objective factors. For example, the sensitivity to impacts is subjective, but things like distance, how far away you're looking at it from, visibility, visual contrast, those are all objective features. And your consulting team did use a lot of these objective features. It's just what bothers me was the statement that they can't come to a conclusion.
You used the word "your," just so the record's clear, you're referring
PSEs, yeah, the applicant.
to PSCs.
Good point. Good point. Good point. Thank you. So viewer experience is somewhat subjective, but we in this room, if we did a cross section, if we showed some pictures, we showed Mount Rainier versus Sodo in Seattle, and we asked for a show of hands of which one was a preferred view, Mount Rainier, it would probably be 99%, and there'd probably be one stubborn person that would say they liked the industrial district better. But people tend to like the same things. We tend to like mountain views, we tend to like water views, we tend to like natural vegetation views, we tend to like interesting architecture, we tend to like agricultural fields, barns, those kinds of things. So while we say beauty is in the eye of the beholder, most beholders appreciate the same types of beauty. So I reviewed the impact analysis. Couple of significant flaws that I want to point out for you in your assessment as you're working your way through this. One is you have to be very careful with the simulations. Simulations can fool as much as they can inform. And there's a chapter in my book. I co-authored a book called Renewable Energy Landscape, which includes analysis of visual impacts of power lines. And we've got a whole chapter just on simulations and time of day, frame of the view, the distance you're viewing it at, the size of the reproduction, the atmospheric quality, all those things come into play when you're producing a simulation and when you're showing it to somebody and saying, this is what it's going to look like. And so I caution the City of Bellevue and yourself to use care and read my book, or at least read what's in the notebook, which provides some summary. You don't have to buy the book. I was just kidding. I want to point out too that one of the major flaws in the analysis is the distance zones. For one reason or another, they truncated the analysis to a quarter mile from the edge of the transmission corridor. I don't understand that at all. The transmission lines are visible and highly contrasting out to 3, maybe 4 miles, depending on the size of the transmission line. A 250 kV, probably 3 miles is your impact zone. So why were there not views chosen from farther away? And I think that there's a tendency to think this is just a NIMBY issue. It's the people living along the lines that are concerned about the impacts in their backyards. While that may be true, the issue is much bigger than that. That line will be visible from probably all kinds of places in Bellevue, including downtown Bellevue, including people's who are looking out their office windows today and don't see a transmission line that will see one if this project is built. And that is not analyzed in the project, in the environmental record. Okay, and that was the main points that I wanted to make, and I'll wrap it up with that.